All right, let's talk about a huge, kind of funny irony in how we all think about money. We spend so much time studying financial history, which, let's be honest, is just one surprise after another, and then we somehow expect it to give us a perfect map for the future. It's this paradox that trips up even the smartest people. So let's get into it and unpack why looking backward isn't always the best way to see what's ahead.
So here's the big question we're going to tackle today. Is history a precise map, something that shows you the exact path to take? Or is it maybe more like a compass, something that just gives you a general sense of direction, while leaving it up to you to navigate all the new, uncharted territory yourself?
Okay, so at the core of this whole thing is this idea we can call the historians as prophets fallacy. It's this simple, really appealing thought that what happened in the past is a totally reliable blueprint for what's going to happen next. And look, it's a super tempting trap to fall into, but it's a deeply flawed way to see the world, and we're about to find out why.
So, okay, why is this prophecy, this idea of looking to the past, so flawed? Well, let's kick things off with the most unpredictable ingredient in the entire mix: people.
So right off the bat, here's the first huge reason history isn't a perfect roadmap. Investing. It isn't physics, right? It's psychology. It's driven entirely by human beings, and, well, we are complicated creatures. I mean, just think about the difference for a second. In hard sciences, the rules are fixed. Gravity doesn't wake up one day and decide to feel differently, you know? A kidney works the same way it did 1,000 years ago. But investing? Wow, that's a whole other ballgame. It's driven by these raw, messy, unpredictable human emotions: fear, greed, paranoia, excitement. You just can't bottle that stuff up in a neat little formula.
And this quote right here, it just nails it. In the world of money, people react. They adapt. When an investment opportunity gets too good, everybody rushes in, and that opportunity starts to shrink. When things get really, really bad, people get creative, they innovate, and they find solutions. The market is always changing because we are always changing our minds and our behavior.
Now, you'd think, right, that someone who's lived through a huge market crash would be an expert on the next one. But, and this is wild, the data actually shows the opposite is often true. That personal experience can hardwire us with some serious biases and a ton of overconfidence. We end up preparing for the last crisis all over again, which can totally blind us to the next one, which will almost certainly look completely different.
Okay, and that leads us to our next big idea. Financial history, it isn't a smooth, predictable story of averages. Not at all. It's a story defined by the outliers, those huge, rare, and completely out of the blue events that just change everything. I mean, just take a look at this list. The Great Depression, World War II, 9/11, the 2008 crash. These weren't just little blips on the radar. No way. These were massive, earth-shattering surprises that completely bent the arc of history. These are the kinds of events that actually move the needle. And by their very definition, nobody saw them coming by just looking at what happened before. All right, let's play this out. Let's trace the crazy ripple effect from just one of these events. Take the 9/11 attacks. A profound, unbelievable shock on a human and geopolitical level. There was absolutely no historical financial model on Earth that could have predicted that event or what immediately came after. So what happened in response? A big one was the Federal Reserve basically hitting the panic button and slashing interest rates down to almost nothing to keep the economy going. Well, that led directly to a totally unforeseen consequence: a giant, multi-year housing bubble. All that cheap money fueled a crazy frenzy of borrowing and building. But wait, the story doesn't stop there, not even close. The housing bubble collapses in 2008, which leads to a massive recession. And one of the long-term ripple effects? As families lost their wealth and jobs, a whole lot more students had to take on a whole lot more debt to go to college, which helped fuel the student debt crisis we're still dealing with today. So you see, one single shocking event, and you get these unpredictable ripples stretching out for decades. And all this points to another huge mental trap we fall into: the failure of imagination. This is basically when we gear up for the future by thinking the next big disaster is going to be a carbon copy of the last one. We anchor all our expectations to only what we've already seen. And man, history is just littered with tragic examples of this. The ancient pharaohs would build granaries based on the worst Nile floods they had on record, only to get completely wiped out by an even bigger one. The Fukushima nuclear reactor, it was engineered to withstand the worst tsunami in that region's entire recorded history until an even bigger one came along. Here's the key thing to remember, and it's so important. A record-breaking event, by its very definition, has never happened before.
There's no precedent for it. Okay, so there's another giant problem with using history as a perfect map. The landscape itself is constantly changing. The rules of the game, the tools we use, the very structure of the economy, it's always evolving, which means a lot of old wisdom just expires.
Just stop and think about the tools we use to invest today. The 401k, the bedrock of retirement for millions of people, that wasn't even a thing until 1978. The Roth IRA didn't show up until 1998. So much of the financial advice we take for granted today applies to a world that's actually incredibly new.
And just look at the market itself. It's a totally different beast. Today, tech companies make up more than a fifth of the S&P 500. 50 years ago, that sector barely even existed. So trying to compare how the market behaved back in, say, 1970 to how it behaves today, it's like comparing two totally different animals. It just doesn't work. And if you need the ultimate proof, look no further. Benjamin Graham, this is the literal father of value investing. Even he admitted, late in his life, that his own famous time-tested formulas, well, they just didn't work anymore. The world had changed right under his feet, and he was smart enough to know his old map was useless. So, okay, if history isn't a map, what the heck is it good for? Is it useless? No. This is where we need to shift our thinking. It's time to stop looking for a detailed map and start learning how to use a compass.
The Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman just nails this idea. He says that when we get blindsided by some big event, the lesson isn't, okay, I won't make that specific mistake again. No, the real lesson is much bigger, much more profound. The world is just really, really hard to predict. So really, the best way to look at history's long, long list of surprises is as one giant lesson in humility. Every single shock, every crash, every unexpected boom, it's the world telling us, you have no idea what's around the corner. And accepting that, truly accepting that, is the first step toward real wisdom. And that brings us right back to where we started, to our core idea. A map, see, it gives you a very specific path, but it's a path through a world that doesn't exist anymore. The terrain has changed. A compass, on the other hand, gives you a general direction. It reminds you of timeless truths, like human greed and fear are constants, or people will always adapt to new conditions. It helps you navigate the new, surprising world as you actually encounter it, instead of trying to follow an old, outdated path. And all this leaves us with the million-dollar question, doesn't it? If the biggest risks, the ones that can really hurt you, are always the ones nobody has ever seen before, how on earth do you prepare for them? The answer isn't about trying to be a psychic. It's about being durable. It's about building enough room for error so that you can handle whatever the future throws at you. That's the real lesson history teaches us.